Over to you, Mark.
Thanks. Hello again, and welcome back to Photo Studio Operations Forum 2022. For our next session, I'd love to introduce you to Lauren Stefaniak Smith from Victoria's Secret & Co. Lauren will be asking the question, is time money? And how to strike the right balance for your Ecomm Photo Studio. Now, we're keenly aware that the emphasis on budget, speed, and quality content, it's important. This is particularly the case for those of us in Ecomm Photo Studios where efficiency and other KPIs can be measured down to the minute. The old adage, time is money, can often come up when we're tasked with identifying opportunities to cut costs, increase speed, maintain the same, or better, still improve quality. But be warned, leaning too far in one direction can upset the finely tuned balance of operations for which we're accountable. So over the next half hour or so, we're going to learn more about delivering cost-effective assets to the business, maintaining a holistic view of the business goals, and ensuring, most importantly, a happy, healthy, and productive team culture. And as always, don't forget to join in the discussion in the chat tab, and please use the Q&A box to send us any questions for Lauren at the end of today's session. So without further ado, hello, Lauren.
Hi, Mark. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It is such a pleasure to join you here today at the Henry Stewart Photo Studio Ops Forum. There have been so many incredible speakers so far that I've sat in, and I'm so excited to sit in on the rest of today. I want to thank the Henry Stewart team for organizing this incredible virtual conference, and thank you to all of you who have decided to sit in on my presentation. So with that, we'll dive right in. Welcome. I'd like to kick off with introducing myself and explain a little bit about why this topic is particularly relevant to me. I'm Lauren Stefaniak Smith, like Mark said, Director of Creative Operations at Victoria's Secret & Co. I have 10 years of experience working in operations for retail brands, and while I've spent the bulk of my career with VS & Co., I have also held roles at other large companies such as Ralph Lauren and Briogeo. The current scope of my role includes a wide breadth of responsibilities across the newly consolidated Victoria's Secret Beauty and Pink brands. And I'm currently overseeing all sorts of things. Creative operations arm of our team, responsible for operationalizing our creative team within the larger scope of the total business. I also oversee a sample closet that feeds some of our editorial photo shoots. And lastly, I oversee all assets, photography and video to support our editorial campaigns, website product copy, and the e-commerce photo studio. Over the past 5 years, I've been responsible for the growth, transition, and transformation of our e-commerce photo studio, which is why this topic is so near and dear to my heart. So what are we going to discuss today? I will lead off with providing various meanings of the phrase time equals money and how we might see that show up inside of our photo studios. I'll then aim to break down how we can evaluate time and how we can start thinking about the ranking and value of time in various ways. From there, we'll talk through some examples. I'll pose a question to you and look for you all to vote inside of the poll tab with multiple choice answers. We'll talk through the different answers and what I think is best given the context. And then we'll wrap up and leave time at the end for Q&A. I'd love to hear questions, comments, thoughts, etc. I really do want to hear from you. So diving right in, we hear the phrase time equals money so much. It's so pervasive. And it's one of those phrases that is so difficult to refute, and mostly because it's so vague. Without any context around it, it is so hard to say, you know what, that doesn't fit in this context. But understanding the different contexts of what the time equals money phrase can mean for you can really help you pick at, what does this mean for me? How can I maximize my time? How can I maximize money in a way that makes sense instead of just throwing a phrase out there? So the first context that we see this phrase show up is typically when we're thinking about our own personal use cases. More time equals more money. We think about this in terms of the hours that we spend working and the monetary return we receive from it. For example, I work 8 hours and make X dollars for those 8 hours. Therefore, if I work 10 hours, I should make more than X dollars in a proportion tied to the increased amount of hours I spend. We do also see this inside of our photo studios, but in a smaller way. We can look at this in the photo studio in the context of, if I elongate the shoot day, then I can shoot more, then I can make more money for the day. However, the business doesn't often see the time-money relationship as being directly proportional. Instead, it's often the case that they see it as an inverse relationship, meaning the less time spent doing something, the more money for the business. Granted, this does assume that time is being maximized and that any time savings are being spent on other worthwhile and fulfilling tasks, but that's not often the case, as we know. Inside of the photo studio, this could look like, I reduce the time it takes to take one shot, so therefore I can increase my shoot productivity for the day. Unfortunately, this also means that the opposite is true. The more time I spend on something, the less money I make. And this can lead you down a really bad path of time savings at the detriment of your output. We'll talk about this more in a little bit, but I do want you to be aware of the inverse. And then lastly, there is a dreaded fourth meaning. Less time equals less money. This one is a business killer, not just for the output of the business and the dollars that they make in the revenue, but also for you personally. This one we want to avoid. So now that we have an idea of the different contexts that phrase can show up, we can evaluate time and see what time is worth it, what time isn't worth it, where are we spending time where we shouldn't be. And the way that I like to think about this is on all scales across all levels, from what we would consider repetitive tasks of a lower level individual contributor, all the way up through the ideation at a leadership level. And from there, we're able to evaluate the worst of the worst cases, which is bad or broken automations and integrations. This is arguably the worst case scenario for you if you want to save time to make more money. These are often built by different teams who do not understand your workflow. They're often built with a set it and forget it mentality. This is just going to run itself. And then if something were to go wrong, as it often does, it takes more resources, energy, and effort to fix this. So I would argue at the top of the list, this is like the worst thing that can happen. After that is a low functioning individual contributor. So you really want people who are high performing inside of this space, especially when it's a repetitive task. And so why this isn't nearly as bad or broken is that people are moldable. You're able to train them, give them feedback, help them perform better, point out the ways in which they're wrong. It's much easier to talk to a person than it is to try to understand where something went wrong technology-wise. After that is ineffective or underutilized technology. So you have something in place, a system or a tool that is supposed to make your lives easier. But if it's ineffective, meaning that it maybe doesn't make sense for your business, your process doesn't match it anymore, or it's underutilized, you don't have buy-in, your partners don't like it, for whatever reason, if you have an ineffective or underutilized technology, that will hold you back from saving time and making money. On the flip side of that, there are some things leading toward the ideation that is a really good use of your time. Established and well implemented technology. Kind of goes without saying because this comes right after the last one, but if you have a tool and a system that is perfectly integrated with your workflow, it's humming, your teams know how to use it, you know how to use it, and you're fully maximizing the potential of that tool, that is really, really worth it for you from a time and money perspective. But it's not the highest. I would argue that a high functioning individual contributor is actually more value than an established and well implemented technology tool, because that's the person who can think beyond just the tool to develop a better way. And as you see, as we go down this chart, that's really what this is all about. It's amazing to have the people doing the work. That is what turns water into wine. That's what moves us forward inside of these photo studios. Getting the actual work done is critical. But as you pull up and out and you see a better way and you think about implementing better ways of performing, that's really where your value is in time. So the last one here is clear decision-making by leadership. If you are crystal clear on the charge by your leaders, this is what I want, then you're able to action on it. If you don't know what your CEO or your leader at the C-suite wants from you, then you're going to spend so much time marching in one direction, maybe what they want you to do, maybe not, and then having to backtrack, trying to figure out what they're saying, do something different, pivot. Whereas if they just spent the time to tell you what they clearly wanted from the get-go, you'd be running. That's the best use of your time. So now that we understand the value of time and how we might look at where we spend our time, I'd like to turn to a time money matrix. And this is not nearly as cool as New York Magazine's approval matrix, but I tried. And I do think there's some value here. So if we're looking at a matrix from slower to faster and unprofitable to profitable, I will be highlighting some key things that popped out at me as things that are factors that can influence us inside of our photo studios most often. And I will caveat this by saying it's unlikely that you're faced with only one of these at any given time. There are a host of other factors, as we know. It's never just one problem. It's like whack-a-mole. But this does pull out some of the most frequent and biggest things that we're tasked with that influence our photo studios. So starting at the top left, the slowest and most unprofitable that we can experience inside of our photo studios is complexity, especially in the e-com space. Editorial is a different ballgame, but when we're inside of an e-commerce photo studio, anytime you pick apart at the standardization and the well-oiled machine that you've built to add in complexity, you're pulling it apart. It will make you slower, it'll cost more money and take more time. The second thing is elongating your SLAs. This could look like, I need an extra day in retouching if you want it to look better. Photo studios are a place where we stick so closely to KPIs. I can turn an image in 8 minutes or whatever it may be. That elongating SLAs really do matter here, and they do make you slower and less profitable. The longer it takes you to get from point A to point B inside of an Ecomm photo studio, the more money you're losing. Now moving to the slower but profitable quadrant are things that we saw on the last slide, tilting toward the ideation sector, decision-making and pre-planning. So if you're clear on that decision, it's a little bit slower because it's going to take you time to understand what it is that you want to hear from, what it is that the business wants to hear from you. It is going to take the time for them to develop that point of view. But once you have that point of view and you're clear on it, you will profit. And then hand in hand with that is pre-planning. So spending the time up front so that it's seamless on the back end will be critical for your photo studio. And this may look like creating style guides. It may look like developing a pool of talent that you can pick from at a moment's notice. There are ways that you can set yourself up for success that take time that will then make you faster on the back end and profitable. Moving to the sweet spot that we're all aiming to achieve is a profitable and faster model. This is like a half man, half machine thing for me. So you need good technology. You need technology that works seamlessly with your photo studio, with your people, with your assets, with what your business is trying to do, your platform, everything. There needs to be a very integrated and seamless technology tool at your disposal. And then you need quality talent to run it. So it will not be good enough that you have this kick-ass tool that you absolutely love and your business buys into. You need people who are high functioning, they know how to do the work, they get through it quickly, they can think outside the box, people who can imagine a better way. When you have the two of these together, you will soar. And then bringing us back down to earth, unprofitable, but still faster, added headcount. I don't know how many times I've heard, just throw people at it. Throw people at the work if you want to get it done. That doesn't actually make you money because people cost money. So the more people you add in, let alone the complexity associated with training, having more cooks in the kitchen, the actual dollars associated with adding headcount doesn't actually make you profitable. It'll make you faster, but it won't make you profitable. And then the second thing is a lesser output. So you can get faster, but if you don't have that quality infrastructure in place, you don't have quality talent, for whatever reason, you're just trying to get the shots done, you may end up with an output that doesn't look great. Something goes up on your website that you're not happy with. Things get left in shots that were supposed to be removed. Just because you get faster doesn't mean that you have a profitable output if it means that the quality suffers. So now that we understand the matrix, we're going to walk through some examples. I'm going to pose this question to you. And as my friend Millie reminded me, I'm going to let you guys know that the poll tab is next to your chat tab and Q&A tab. So I'm going to ask the question, read through the multiple choice answers, and then I can see you all voting. So I would love to see you all vote, and we'll talk through. So first question here. Your photography studio's budget was cut by $2 million for 2023. Which option best maintains your current output? Option A, renegotiate talent rates to better align with the budget. Option B, minimize post-production spend by retouching less. Option C, reduce complexity and styling to increase your shot count. Or option D, cut breakfast to elongate the shoot day. This one's a joke. If you vote for this one, I'll know you're not serious. So with that, I'm going to watch the votes come in, and then I'll show you what I think, and then we'll talk through. Nobody's voting for D yet. I appreciate that. Okay, cool. So as I'm looking at this, C is the strong winner. There are a lot of A's and fewer B's. And so I also chose C. And I'll talk through why. So renegotiating talent rates to better align with your budget. You could do that, but you're going to piss off a lot of people. And if you really believe in that talent thing that we were just talking about, having quality talent, asking them to do the same exact thing or faster for less money is probably not going to help you in the long run. It'll get you somewhere in the short run and it will weed through your pool very quickly, but it's not really a long-term strategy for retention and keeping your quality talent. Option B, minimize post-production spend by retouching less. You could also do that, but I would argue it's not really your call. You would need a lot of creative buy-in on this one in order to pull the trigger on this first. Is your business okay with doing something different that may mean a lesser output to save money? Option C, which is where I voted, and most of you did as well. 59.5% of you voted for this one. Reduce complexity and styling to increase shot count. So this one's critical. The complexity, like I said, is a productivity killer. The more pieces that you add in, the more shoes, how much is that really moving the needle? I remember inside of our photo studio, we had so many conversations about, well, what if we all did this one athletic shoe versus barefoot? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for the customer? And then we found out that through some testing, the customer didn't care. She wasn't looking at her feet. She was looking at the product that we were trying to sell. So you're spending all this time, energy, and effort on figuring out what styling prop made sense for us when the customer, it didn't even register with her. And then cutting breakfast along the shoot day, that will piss off people even more. Don't do that. Okay, scenario 2. Your business underwent a reduction in headcount and your team is now 25% smaller. Which option is most cost effective? A, leverage existing teams to build automation scripts. B, reallocate work to existing talent. C, source new technology to automate some workflows. Or D, stop doing some work. No resources equal no output. I'll pause and let some of the votes come in on this one too. I don't know if you guys can see this on your end, but it's very fun watching the poll move. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, so it looks like A and C are pretty much tied. A is in the lead with 43.3. We do have some votes for B and D as well. So I agree. A, leverage your existing teams to build automation scripts. So the focus here is cost effective, right? And so introducing any technology, bringing in additional people, stopping the work isn't really going to save you money, either money going out or money coming in. So do what you can with what you have in these moments and leverage the existing teams to start to pick away at those low-hanging fruit in order to build some automation into your workflow. If you can get your baseline level repetitive tasks that don't require oversight out of the way and streamlined, then you'll take pressure off your team members. You'll reduce the complexity. You'll reduce the amount of errors that can occur, and overall just lighten the load on the people who are left on your team. The reason why I did not pick reallocate work to existing talent, that's just overburdening people. And I think at a time when a headcount reduction occurs, which we underwent one a few months ago, many companies are undergoing them right now, reallocating the work is not a good way to retain the talent that you do have. It'll just put additional strain. It'll make them worse at their job that they're doing because they're overwhelmed. And it won't really get you your output that you're looking for. Sourcing new technology to automate some workflows. So this is like what you strive to achieve, but what's hard in this moment is that you don't have the dollars to do this. So instead of choosing this one, I opted for the building automation scripts with the existing talent. The goal should be to have a technology that you really believe in, but sourcing new talent new technology at a time like this isn't really something that makes sense. And then the last one, stop doing some work, no resources, no output, is a very noble thing that we should try to say, but is not ultimately the solution here. That won't end up with any output and will potentially end up with you out the door. But raising a flag that you are overwhelmed and underwater in work is important in this moment. So with that, thank you. It has been such a pleasure. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak for you.
Lauren, thank you. That was fantastic. I'm on my laptop now. If anyone's familiar with Apple mice, mine's just died and I can't plug it in because it goes on the bottom of it. Lauren, there's a few key points on that really stood out for me before we go into a few questions. I think one of them, and if there's one thing anyone can take out of this today, is the importance of pre-planning. If everybody knows what they're doing when they come in and you know how to keep that operation going, especially with the amount of talent that we use in studios and new talent that's always coming in, the power of pre-planning is just vital. And then I shouldn't joke, but I fear the day I'd ever have to walk in and say no to breakfast to people. So I will never, never do that. So fantastic. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions that I'll kind of go through before we wrap up. And I am keeping an eye on the clock as well. I love the polls there. They were brilliant. So you talk about automations and integrations on one of the slides. What's the difference between them? And is one better than the other?
Yeah, I love this question. So the difference for me between an automation is an integration is an automation is something that does the work on behalf of a human being. So the context that I think of this as in our company is that we have bots. So they are computers that are set up to mimic a human being's actions versus an integration. An integration for me is when systems are connected together and feeding each other information in a way that's intelligent. So for me, I would say integrations mean more because it helps connect. And I think the more connections you make and the more visibility you have into things around you, the better you are and smarter, faster, everything that you are. But it does also help to have automations in place where you have a tech-like thing operating on behalf of a human being when you don't have that human being.
Definitely. Brilliant. I think I might have answered this question already, but how does creativity factor into the matrix where we talked about slower, faster. Yeah.
Yeah. So this it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm amongst operational friends, so I can say it. But really, an Ecomm Photo Studio, when you're thinking about the output for an Ecomm Photo Studio, there's really not much room for creativity. I would say creativity is super important in order to retain your talent and keep them happy and keep them creative, but don't do it when you're trying to produce things for your Ecomm Photo Studio. Do it after the shoot day wraps. Do an off day that's just, hey, here's some product. How can we make this fun, fresh, and exciting? But integrating it into your process and trying to make it something that's part of what you do on the day-to-day will just slow you down and make you more expensive.
Brilliant. I love the idea of an off day, a down day, a kind of reset day. It's something we've tried to implement recently, and the value of it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Great tip. Do you have workflow software today? If yes, what does it help you with?
Yeah, so we do have workflow software. Our Ecomm Photo Studio is currently run and managed by a vendor who has their own proprietary technology. There's a sample management tool we use, which has been so critical in understanding where all the products are. As I know, we talked about this earlier, but samples are a problem for everybody everywhere. So the sample management tool has been super critical. And then we do have a asset repository-like tool that will carry the ball across the finish line from photo shoot through final delivery that has some workflows in it.
Brilliant. What do you mean when you say strike a balance? What are you trying to balance between?
Yeah, this is a loaded question in and of itself. So the balance is for me is between how can we do what's right by the business while also doing what's right for the people who do the work. And so you can go full force at doing exactly what the business wants you to do and completely destroy your team, destroy the morale. You'll have no one left. And like that, there's no balance there. So there's a balance, not just between like, how do we make money? How do we save time? But also how do we have a happy, healthy culture of associates that love showing up to work every day, which is what we aim to achieve while also making money for the business.
Yeah, it is a difficult balance, isn't it? Yeah. Very, very difficult. I think we've got time for a couple more. Does this framework work in all studio environments, both in-house, vendor, hybrid?
Yeah, so I think so. I don't know if anybody on this call caught my session in May in New York when I talked about the different studio. Shameless plug for myself. But I do think that this works anywhere, right? I mean, like the players in the game are different, but at the end of the day, a photo shoot's a photo shoot. You have producers, photographers, models, if it's on figure. All the elements are there. Decision makers, all of it's the same thing. It just may look a little bit different depending on how you execute.
Okay, brilliant. Let's see, I think I've got one more. Do all businesses need both high function associates and good technology? Can you have one and not the other?
Yeah, I think if you're humming along really smoothly and like your peak performance, you need both. But I do think that if you had to pick one over the other, I go human all the way. I think a strong team of people can do way more for you than technology can. It's just what I've seen works better for me.
I absolutely agree with that. I think, I think we can all learn to teach to create a script to press buttons for us, can't we? But it's the power of the creativity and the mind. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Lauren, that was absolutely fantastic. Guys, Lauren will be about in the lounges in the chat. Please reach out to her if you've got any more questions. Lauren, thanks for your time today. I really enjoyed chatting with you before, and this session's been really insightful and very, very relatable. We've now got a short break before the final studio ops session with the panel discussing the culture shift. So in the break, please navigate to the lounge tab, join one of the tables to network with the fellow attendees in real time. Alternatively, you can navigate back to the agenda tab to join one of the Tech Lab sessions with Brain Rider or Team ITG. I'll see you shortly. Thanks, bye.